So including and transcending is going to be an important part of our conversation today. We're going to talk about the Holy Trinities. So the Trinity, the number 3, is this stable number. And you'll find it in esoteric teachings, and you'll find it in progressions of consciousness. So we're going to talk about a map of consciousness. And if you know me, you know I love maps. That's why I love the gene keys. They are perspectives in which to hold wisdom, to see our lives from a new way. It's like a prism. They're not necessarily true. They're just a way of looking at the world. And that way of looking at the world organizes information so that it gives us more personal power to move forward. And the gene keys themselves are organized in 3s. And that was one of the innovations that Richard Rudd had on human design. Because human design, you have a body graph, and you have lit up centers, and you have gates of the I Ching, and they're connected through channels. And that gives you a sense of your blueprint. But there was something in that kind of static picture that Richard Rudd was like, it doesn't feel right. There feels like there's levels. And so he got the transmission, the download of these levels of the I Ching. So the I Ching is this ancient book of divination, of oracle, of understanding the seasons. Remember that story of all of life can be seen on the back of a turtle, on the turtle's shell. All the patterns are available. So someone's like decoding the patterns that are already there. And isn't that fun? That's what many of our jobs are, as wisdom keepers and wisdom holders and leaders and teachers. We're here to decode and share our gnosis, what it is we learned with others. So the Gene Keys has this 3 layers. The layer starts with our shadow, and there are 64 codes that matches our genetics in our body. And we have them all. So all these transmissions are for everyone. And if the sun is shining on this gene key, meaning you have a birthday and this is your life work, then you know to really take this on. Because chances are there's some hidden codes to unlock for your life purpose. And I love looking at it because every time I look at my gene key and I peel off a new layer, I'm just like, you can't even make this up. How did this even happen? Like seeing that my codes have the codes of archetypes in them. And I launched a summit and it was about archetypes, and I didn't even know that. So it has this uncanny way of connecting some dots. So today is Gene Key 19. That's where the sun is shining. And we're still in the frequency of a full moon. So in the sisterhood activation, we're going to work with the full moon release mechanism. And we're going to work with this map of consciousness, the 3 levels that I'm going to talk about today. So in the Gene Keys, the level 1 is your shadow. And that today is the shadow of codependence. And we can describe codependence pretty simply as the inability to maintain your own integrity with another. And we could also say, or in a group. And sometimes I would say, even with myself, with my higher self, the inability to maintain integrity. And integrity is at oneness with the self. The coherence of the self, like integer, whole number, like we're whole. So codependence is a break in that, some inability to follow through on your truth of your own being. It's essentially a giving away of your power because of some false belief that you have about the way the world is or about the way you are. And we have them all the time. And there's a certain our rational minds like everything to be linear and packaged. And truthfully, when the divine feminine comes in, she just wrecks all that, right? Because she's there too. And everything is a spiral, and it's like weaving itself in and through. So there's codependency, even when we're touching like levels of the gift frequency. So our job is to awaken ourselves to it, to be awake. So let's talk about the second level, and that's the gift frequency. And there's some really auspicious timing around the gift frequency. If you read any historical fiction, which I've been diving into, I mean, humanity has come a long way, even though we're very present to how far we have yet to go. But that's the progression, that's the linearity of certain levels of worldview and consciousness. And so the gift frequency represents a linear transmission out of the shadow into something that serves more. It's whole. It's not enlightened, but it's conscious. And the gene keys and human design assert that we are in this incredibly important period of time until 2027, where we really get to nail the gift frequency. We're going to come fully in it. So that requires us to do a crap ton of shadow work. I'm like, aren't you seeing it everywhere? Shadow work, shadow work, shadow work. And it's because it's on our menu. And I would include in that like healing work, like trauma work, anything that like all the hidden pain and suffering needs to come out and to be seen. And we are developing tools to be able to work with it. I mean, I just was at my hairdresser's yesterday, and what do we talk about? Shadow work. I love my hairdresser talking about shadow work. So it's on the menu for spiritual people. That's what we're doing, because we really want to step into a higher frequency, a higher octave. We want to unlock some codes in us and have access to more capabilities, more possibilities, rather than the shadow where we just keep swimming in self-perpetuating like victim cycles or victim triangles. It's like we're done. We're waking up to that. So we have till 2027. And at that time, a large percentage of us, I mean, I don't think about a large percentage, because I shouldn't say that. I should say a percentage of us will be fully occupying this. And Ken Wilber, who's sort of the father of transpersonal spirituality and psychology, has said that we really need 6% to go to this worldview called integral. And we're really going to be talking, I'm not going to so much call it that, but that's really what we're talking about here in this transmission when I talk about the 3 levels. And now, so the gift frequency, I didn't even say what it was, is sensitivity. And sensitivity is, and I'm just going to read the first line because it kind of says it all right there. It's about being highly attuned to the needs of others. And in order to be able to sense others and their needs, you must first become independent from them. Bam. So really, it's saying you must really understand your own needs. And really, the word that I'd like to put on this is subtlety. Because as we go from lower dimensions or lower frequencies to higher ones, we're cultivating subtlety. In my study with Andrew Holacek in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, he really talks about how it's the idea of embracing death and transcending death is this notion about becoming more and more and more attuned to subtlety. Instead of binary on off, imagine like the degrees of light that you can receive. That's like a game changer. And that's really going to be how we enter the third stage, or the third level, is through subtlety and letting go of binary thinking. I'm super excited about this. This is material I'm going to bring into my next leadership cohort, because as I tune in to the evolutionary feminine leader, what I'm tuning into is our capacity, especially as feminine, like carriers of feminine frequency. We really have an opportunity to bring in level 3 consciousness, but we have to do our work. And this is what this is all about. So level 2 is the level of the work. And we're going to get into that in a minute. But Richard Rudd also says, and there's a few things to distinguish in this level 2 gift frequency, and that is that he talks about it as a heresy. And I loved that, so I had to bring this through. Because oftentimes following your truth is heretical. I mean, how many know that? There's some truth that has caused you to have to do something against the grain. Quit a job that everyone thought was great for you, or leave a relationship that everyone thought you should stay. Or if you were a college person and saying, I'm not going to study that major that everyone in my family wants me to study. I'm going to march to the beat of my own drum. I'm going to become a heretic in my family and do my own thing. And that is the second level of sensitivity. And I love to think of it that way, because as sensitivity is really a superpower. It's a strength. And that's distinguished from our hypersensitivity or oversensitivity, because really when we're in integrity, when we're in at oneness with ourselves, we are at oneness with everything else. And so there is no overdoing it. There's no underdoing it or overdoing it. There's just this right tone that it strikes, because it's truth. And so as feminine beings, we really have access to our embodiment as life flows through our body. Think of it that way. The masculine principle is the principle of conscious awareness. It's the death principle. It's the principle of nothing, but we are the principle of everything. So as we open to life, we are going to feel everything. And that's the gift of sensitivity. And when we have the internal structure and we know ourselves well enough, it doesn't go off the rails, or if it does, we catch ourselves and we pivot and come back to alignment. And so to just kind of list out the gifts of sensitivity is strength. And that strength is the strength of knowing truly what's yours. It's the strength of feeling the collective. And therefore, it makes you an evolutionary leader, because you can feel the pulse. You can feel what people need. It has you being at one with yourself. And it knows what it needs. And so it really doesn't burn out. It doesn't overextend. And it's, like I said, and if it does, it course corrects. Because there's a love of self in here. There's a respect of self in here. You are included at the table. I know this is a huge message for many women in their midlife who have been acculturated in a totally different way. And we are waking up that actually doesn't serve. And that leads to even a more shadow frequency of resentment and martyrdom that we're just casting off. And so the gift says, yes, you get to feed your own self first and give the overflow. So the highest frequency in this prism of 3 is sacrifice. And sacrifice, gets a pretty bad rap in spiritual circles. And we're going to talk about why that is in a moment as I talk and reveal the map of consciousness in the Holy Trinity. But sacrifice in the gene keys is sacrificing your lower nature for your higher nature. I love that because there's always stuff to sacrifice. There's always ego to sacrifice. And Richard Rudd really named gossip as one of the main things to sacrifice. Not main, one of the examples of how we can look at sacrifice. So when we gossip, it has no energy return. It doesn't do anything for anyone, including our own consciousness. So we're going to see that in level 3, one of the things we can tell that we're in level 3 is what Mark Gaffney, who's a Kabbalistic, incredible scholar, says, aftertaste. Level 3 is aftertaste. Isn't that freaking sublime? It's really sweetness. So when your aftertaste is sweet, you're in level 3. And so we can sacrifice our lower nature, things like gossip, projections, and we can find projections in blame, in entitlement, in ways we point fingers. And we can tell, we get to start to tell the difference between this holy rage, which is like a no, like not on my watch, as distinguished from a blame, of finger pointing. They have different frequencies. The other thing in the city level, these are 64 codes of enlightenment at the city level. And so at this level, we've really sacrificed being a player in the game. I think of it as being someone. And yet, here's the key when we bring in integral theory on the levels, the Holy Trinity of 1, 2, and 3, and that is that they are included and transcended. So you cannot hop over from level 1 to level 3. You got to go through the paces. It's included and transcended. So that's how we get to have compassion for other people who are at lower levels of consciousness. That's because you got to start somewhere and you got to work your way through. And so at an integral level, we see that there are some ideas that are better than others. And we also hold space that people have to walk through those ideas to get to the place of being able to see that some ideas are better than others, but that everyone is equal. So level 3 consciousness, we're going to actually do some exercises in the sisterhood activation around this, but I want to presence a little more about this Holy Trinity. So there's lots of ways of parsing it, but one of the stories that I love the most, that resonated with me many years ago when I heard it, I'll pass it on here, that describes level 1, 2, and 3 consciousness. And that is the story of, you can say a Buddha, like Buddha died, or you could say it was like a master teacher and his son died. So let's go with a master teacher in the Buddhist tradition whose son died. And this master teacher has students. And level one, well, actually, let's go with that the master died. That's going to work better. Let's go, the master dies. Level one, his beginning students all cried. And they cried. Why did they cry? So imagine yourself at level one and you're just a beginner student and your master dies. Why did you cry? You cry because it's painful. You lost your teacher. He's gone. I didn't get a chance to complete my studies, whatever. And then the level two students. The level two students are the students who didn't cry because they know that death isn't real. Their teacher taught them that. That's not real. He's not dead. He's just transcended. No one ever dies. Have you ever been that spiritual person? It's where you understand with your mind, because level two is complexity. Level two is working through the details. If you've ever taken on astrology or even human design or even the I Ching or Kabbalah, any mystical wisdom teaching, like Hermetics, it's all incredibly complicated. When you get inside of it, you become a scholar. And so many people stop there. If you've ever been to Dharamsala, the Buddhist monks sit outside and they argue with each other. They argue scripture with each other. They have this thing where they hit their hand and they go like that. And it's like from darkness into light. That's their punctuation point after they make their point, and then it's for the next person. That's a rigor to it. That's like law school. That's like you're on the mat and you're arguing your ideas, and you get your ideas in your mind. I once went to a seminar in Amsterdam with Tony Parsons, who was this non-dual teacher claiming to have become enlightened through walking on the grass in Hyde Park. And I desperately wanted to understand it. And I was like in my late 30s and I really wanted to embody awakening. I really wanted to bypass my pain, honestly. I just wanted to skip over the pain and let's go to enlightenment. Anyway, I sat with him and I realized in that moment, and that's what really ended my journey, is that what he was talking about could never actually be achieved through the mind. I was sitting in this row with other people and I heard them say, yeah, they were just repeating the things like no one ever dies. I was never born. I don't have a name. I'm not myself. And I was like, oh my God, I am not going to become one of them. Just because no offense to them, but I just knew it was totally mental and it wasn't it. What the teacher was embodying wasn't it. It was conceptual. And so level two students, they're not crying because they know in their head that the master is actually not dead. Now, let's move to level three. What do you think level three students are doing? They're crying. It makes me cry just thinking about it. And so tap into why would level three students be crying? Because the teaching is that level one and level three look exactly the same, but they're not. Their come from place is different. So imagine your own come from place when you are embodying level three. The advanced students, they're crying because they're participating, as Mark Gaffney says, in the yearning force of being. They're playing They're letting the stream of life play through them. They're feeling it all fully. They've become the teaching. And that's why many teachers at that level don't even say anything anymore. What's there to say? And participating in the yearning force of being, and this is really Mark Gaffney's thesis, and I love this, is really participating in Eros. It's participating in Shiva and Shakti. It's participating in the divine masculine, that conscious awareness, that death, that knowledge that nothing ever dies, nothing was ever born, there's nothing here, and life. Playing fully, feeling it fully in its being, as aliveness as this. And that's a sacred and holy place. And so I want to bring this map of consciousness to us as we go into our sisterhood activation in a moment. Because I think that sacrifice and level 3 consciousness gets to be in our drishti. It gets to be, as evolutionary feminine leaders, it gets to be like set on the horizon of where we're going. We might not be there yet because I don't know that we've done the work completely of level 1 and level 2. I think we're in level 2 right now. Let me give you another example because I think this will really help understand spirituality. And that is that the other Holy Trinity, you can break this level 3 consciousness or 3 levels of consciousness down, is pre-personal, personal, and transpersonal. So pre-personal really denies the individual, denies the individual's gifts, that the individual, either they don't know that the individual exists and they only think in terms of a collective, or they know that the individual exists, but they think it's wrong. And the 2 examples of that are, like, have you ever been to Mexico and walked on some of the Aztec ruins? And I remember one of them, I don't remember where this was. Maybe it was, I'm not sure where it was. There was like a hole. There was a court, and there was I don't know how to, like a hoop, but the hoop was not this way, but this way. It was facing each other. And that hoop was where the ball goes through. And it looked like, oh, cool, it's a game. Well, the winners were sacrificed to the gods. So if you were in Incan and Aztec cultures, they were pre-personal. Like, they did not value the individual. So even female sacrifices, women were, and I think men too, but were routinely killed as sacrifices, you know, like throwing virgins off of a cliff. So when we want to idealize indigenous cultures, we have to remember to take the things that are worth saving, this is integral, and let the things go that are not worth saving. Like, we're not going to kill people as sacrifice to the gods. That's pre-personal. So consciousness shifted to personal, and that's what we're really in. And you think about the United States and its Bill of Rights, its Declaration of Independence, its declaration that all people are born equal, that personhood matters, and that each person has a gift to bring forward. That's not what the Constitution says, but like, that's part of the zeitgeist of personal. And we're in that right now. We're really living, and I think fully inhabiting this notion that we're here for a reason. We particularly, there's medicine in my template, there's medicine in your template. But without level 3, it just becomes lonely. And we can see kind of what's happening in the world without level 3. But there's like level 2 people who want to go into level 3 without even understanding it, like saying, like they haven't done the work. And they want to say, gosh, we should all just get along. But to go into level 3, you have to be a level 2. And so I'll leave you with this. To go into level 3 is to go into transcendence. And that's what the city level is about. That's what sacrifice is about. Because you really nailed being yourself. You got it. And now we're available for the collective. And I'm not really positing that this is a linear progression in its entirety. I feel like it's going to be, in and out, in and out, in and out. So we get to touch on it. So level 3 sacrifice. I mean, there are people in this room. I know who you are. I know your story. That your life is sacrifice. You have sacrificed, for example, for your child. Anybody who's a parent knows that's level 3. If you try to do child rearing from level 2, you'll be resentful because they totally demand your time. Most people who find out I don't have a kid, you know what they say to me? Your time is your own. Yeah. So that's a sacrifice. And when sacrifice leads us to this experience of openness, of generosity, of love, of compassion, there's the aftertaste. There it is. That's how you know. And so I want you to play with this because I don't think we're there yet as a culture. And I think we got to get there. And I think that part of that is the path of the evolutionary feminine leader. We're going to learn how to be that. And the first step of learning how to be that is really learning how to take care of our own integrity. So let's end this transmission with gathering all the positive energy that we have generated here. Breathing through that and then beaming it out as beacons of light and dedicating it to all beings. May all beings benefit from the merits of our efforts. Namaste.